afternoon, everybody, and this is Prescott, the Bugatti Owners Club, speaking to you from, as I sit in here, the commentary box. The sun has come out. That little bit of storm has disappeared towards Cheltenham, but as they're not running Cheltenham today for racing, and the horses, they were racing here at Prescott. So enormous welcome. I imagine many of you have not been here before, so maybe just a little bit of history for you. On the screen, in fact, at the moment, that is the early morning boys out in the wet, as you can see, passing through at Torres, and just doing an exhibition run just to show how little wet it was this morning. So the club started here in 1936-37, and the club was purchased by Godfrey and his cousin, two other members, and the boys decided at a delightful lunch in London, at roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, and no doubt a very good glass of claret, that they wanted somewhere permanent for them to be able to enjoy their racing and the exercise of their Bugatti cars. So, like all English gentlemen, they had a quiet look round the countryside, and they found this wonderful estate, and it was purchased in 1936. Work began on the hill almost immediately, and a gentleman called Tony Rolt, and one of the corners today that you'll be seeing on the screen very shortly, was part and parcel of the transition of what was a hill into a hill climb, and a hill climb championship. Their very first international was held here in 1937 and 38, I beg pardon, 38 and 39, an international rally, because of course that was part and parcel of the Europeans, and the Germans and the French and the Italians came across here. And Bugatti himself, Torres, came across with his son, and they bought several of their cars, a Type 57, I think it was, and 59. But more importantly, they competed here against the names of Mays, the RAs, and the World Championships at that particular time. At that stage, the hill that you're going to see this afternoon is on the long course, and the long course celebrates 61 years of its completion on June the 5th this year. The short course, which has been historically used by the Vintage Sports Car Club, who amalgamated in 35-36 as a separate club to the VOC, although they were invited to join the Bugatti Owners Club, but as it was a new club for the VSCC, they didn't have sufficient funds to come and join us and be partners in this climb. However, every August they come here for 2 days of that particular, or every single year, and they compete. So in your diary, August is a date when the VSCC come here for 2 days, and we compete with them on whether it's Bentleys, ERAs, Fraser Nashes, Delages, Delahaye's, and the cream of pre-1939 cars. So, the cars that you are seeing at the moment have obviously had two respective trial runs this morning. Many of them, this is their very, very first time here at Prescott, and it is a highly technical track compared to, I would say, Shelsley, which is a really guts and thunder track, where their terminal speed over the end of the finish is something between 100 and 105 miles per hour, whereas this is a far more technical hill in terms of that. Very comparable probably in many respects to Lowton Park, which is tucked away in just west of Shrewsbury, and of course the other hill climbs that we compete in, the Harewood, which is up in Yorkshire, and where's the one down in deepest Wiscombe? That's right, Wiscombe in the spring, which is a beautiful little hill climb, again on a private estate. The hill there's covered in magnificent bluebells, and as you go over Bunny's Leap, which is the first element of straight before you have to take a right through the hard gate on the right hand side, and you disappear up in a series of climbs and through the Bluebells woods to finish. So that's part and parcel of our hill climbing championship, many of which the cars here today compete in, although many are today, having wandered around and spoken to most of you, I believe, this is your very first time. So, an enormous welcome to minis and variations, Riley Elves and minis. So, the times will be coming up on the screen in front of you on the left-hand side. I will obviously be providing those times and comments upon the individual drivers. We have number 6 on the line at the moment. That's Daniel Bradford Jones and a Morris 1275 Grand GT in Class 1. I haven't got any comments on the young gentleman, but I will be able to stagger a few comments later on. Each climb I'll try and give you a description of where he is on the hill, how he's attempting to be successful on it. Occasionally you'll see a little bit of a ripple of a gear change. I do understand, coming to it Tories, that some of the mini racing boys are actually changing gear from second to first, which I find a very interesting attitude. As to the hill itself, well, the first 64 feet is the most valuable really in analysis, because that is going to give you an opportunity to go underneath the bridge, and then of course coming to a Tories. Tories is, as you come under the bridge, delicate left with the camber of the road running to your right. So in wet weather like this, you do feel, as you're accelerating through, you are drifting a little further towards the grass verge on your right-hand side. However, coming through, you'll then be presented with a Tories. Tories is a slightly uphill and right-hand bend. It carries on for quite a considerable period of time. There's a good runoff area for those who are enthusiastic enough not to stick on the tarmac. And then you dip down very quickly, probably change gear, probably touch maybe third, although I think the minis today will probably stay in second gear. Coming up to Pardon, you tend to run slightly wide on the right-hand side towards the Armco barrier, and then flick in hard on the left-hand side. And you'll see the little rumble strip on the left-hand side. If you don't pirouette on that and you keep going, you could run slightly wide, and then you're going towards the midway, which are, they call them the straight. Well, for some of the larger cars, certainly the Bentleys and the larger Type 35 Bugattis, that doesn't look straight at all, but for a Mini, with a little bit of care, you can go through pretty straight. You then come to Rolt corner, which is a sharp left-hand corner. Armco on your left, little space on the right-hand side, but if you get absolutely right and can carry your speed all the way through, then you'll come up to the semicircle. Semicircle, I think, probably is the most technically difficult on the hill, having completed up to that point a good strategy and good speed. You approach it and it is blind on your left. You can see where the corner starts to take a sharp right, and if you have enough speed, move gently from the left-hand side across, keep it really tucked in straight, round, and then you at last see the finishing post. So your heartbeat can actually begin to relax a little. And you look at the time and you think, where did I lose? Right. Come back to the box and you can see the results and our timing and results system, which gives you each part of the hill climb very carefully, very accurately, and you can analyze where you've been successful, or maybe you've made one or two mistakes. And it's obviously knocking those mistakes out that enables you to have a very good climb, possibly winning your class. And those, of course, in the single-seaters who we look after, with the British Hill Climb Championship in the Midlands, that gives you a wonderful record, FTD, fastest day of the day. So, that gives you a little resume. Having it on screen gives you a really wonderful opportunity of seeing the whole of this hill, right from the very start down here, which are marshals in their orange gear. You'll see that there's a stick, for those that haven't come hill climbing before, put behind the car as it nudges up to the front line. So if the marshals give a little bit of hand to push him back, that means he doesn't start over the front line. There's a make and break light barrier that goes across, so immediately passes over that hill climb and the timing begins. A little wet for the start at the moment. That particular car, number 19, I think, was running on a slick. If not, he certainly required a little bit more grunt to go forwards. A lot of the hill climb specialists, particularly the hill climb champions of the Formula 2 and the single-seaters with their immense power, start way on the left-hand side, so it gives them almost a straight run towards the bridge, which of course is that first 64 feet, which is all important. Just reflecting on the first 64 feet, out of our first 10 cars, it's quite interesting to see who had the fastest time over that first 64 feet. Jeremy Jones at number 17 was at 3.23, and he ended up with a time of 64.49. It was Daniel Bradford Jones, who was our very first starter, in number 6, at a 3.76, but he picked up midway and at Pardon and had a time of 64.24. There was a 63.90 Matt Webb in number 10. Again, he was 3.99, but he picked it up at the bridge. You see the speed there was 43. And then at Torres, he made an excellent entrance, but not enough slip down when he came to Pardon. But he collected it midway. So you can see how the hill actually breaks down in a number of component parts. And your efficiency, or your important of getting it all absolutely correct, will, I undoubtedly, give you a big smile on your face at the end of your run. And if you win, brilliant. But if you just enjoyed it, frankly, that's what it's all about. The corner that we are, I think, predominantly showing at the moment is probably Torres. Torres is where you come from under the bridge and you're drifting very, very delicately to the outside of the track, coming slightly uphill, holding on to the power and accelerating. And Torres is really part 3. You approach it slightly on the left-hand side, hit the apex tight, and then you'll find the car is actually drifting a little bit left, by which time you're into the second part, which is the middle part of Torres. And then if you look very carefully on your right as you're approaching, you can just drift a little to the left-hand side, clip it, and then you start the dip down towards Pardon. Accelerate down towards Pardon, coming up towards Pardon, move gently to the right-hand side. This will probably give you a perfect shot in a minute. At the moment, the photograph or the film of the live is actually coming through to, this is Rolt corner, very nicely held, kept his speed well and truly, flicking on the right-hand side, moving slightly, probably critically too far to the left, but he's got it back on the inside. That'll be a very good time for Claire Douce of, let's see, was she going to be a 61, 62, 63? A little bit of water, I'm afraid, from that little storm that came. The bottom part of the track will very quickly dry up, but underneath the trees, which are now of course in their spring bloom, which came out a couple of weeks ago with the amount of water that we've all received, as well as the grass cutting, which of course has been considerably heavy the last few weeks. Those trees are now dropping their rain on that part of the new tarmac, and that'll remain a little wet, I'm afraid, for some considerable time. So the first quarter, or first 2/3, you see this little Mini coming round now, number 21, David West. Nicely approached to Torres, accelerating down, taking it just a tuck too fast, moving to the right-hand side. It's a nice approach, Nicely round, didn't lose any speed, kept the foot down. There's a bit of grip actually. It's been really dry on that little section underneath the trees by passing the post there. Coming to Rolt Corner. Could take Rolt Corner a bit tighter to be really lifted up the rear left into semicircle and away over the finishing line. Finishing line to me always seems such a long way after semicircle. You seem to hang on to that corner and hang on, and then suddenly with a gleam on your face you can see the finishing line, and you can thunder towards that, gently brake and then come down safely, reduce your heartbeat from a considerable number of beats to a more equitable status to enjoy. Right, we're now number 26 on the line. 26 is Matt Clark and an Austin Mini. That's a 1460cc, so really that's probably the maximum 1500cc. Little Minis. Nice roll bar, nicely presented in red. I always think they look like a beautiful bunch of Smarties. We have such lovely colours amongst the Minis. A bit like the Morris Thousands we have here in an earlier meeting with the VSCC and post or pre-war. Drivers will always enjoy coming back to look at the results of the timing because it actually gives them the various sections of the hill, so they can see where they've either achieved success marginally or made a mistake. So you can break the hill down in all its respective component parts. Up on the screen we got the shared car with Martin Watts 717. His first 64 feet, which is probably the most important for accelerating away from the start line up to the bridge, was 3:06. For instance, compared to Matt Clark, it was 3.29, so Martin Watts was considerably ahead of him on that. When he came to the bridge, it was 49, and Ettores 19.15. So his time, midway, was 39.42. He's got the S's and the semicircle, which will finish off his run. It'll be a good time. Both driver and car have 2 attempts in the afternoon. The morning runs are obviously to understand how the hill works, understand the complexity of each individual corner, and then it's ideally putting it all together, making it swing and smoothly going from start to finish. But the wonderful part of breaking it up into various component parts is that each individual driver can actually see where he's accelerated, achieved, failed, or miserably failed, whichever. I say miserably only because you individually want to be as competitive as possible. Although frankly, driving up a hill of this nature and this magical historic value is really part and parcel of your history of motor racing. You can go home and say, right, I've tackled Prescott. I haven't won on it, but it'll probably take you a great number of years to actually understand the individual component parts and put them all together. A little bit like putting a diamond bracelet together. Each of those wonderful diamonds have got to match each other, both in clarity and stone. And when you put that together on the individual component parts of the hill, which is the first 64 feet, the bridge, Ettores, Pardon, midway, S's, semicircle, and the finishing line, then you know with a big smile you put together the very best component part of the whole climb, and you can celebrate. You may not have won, but you can certainly celebrate. I think this must be a first for Prescott to have a total mini day. And we thought it would be a great celebration, and it certainly brought a great number of interest out. And the varieties that we have are, of course, the Morris Mini Minor, the Austins, what were then Morris and Austin in the early 70s, and then the British Leyland, which of course was the Austin Rover. So you have every component part of that wonderful history here today. And you have a variety indeed of racing minis up to number 40. Number 40's come up to the line, which is Ben Bofield, an Austin Mini, 1380. He's in class 3, which would indicate that it has spats on it, obviously a highly tuned engine, and shows great capability. We see what the first 64 feet is, 3.43. Yep, he managed to get the power down very quickly and very efficiently. And on your screen, you'll probably see he came up to the bridge on a 46. So he lost a little bit of time, interesting enough, to Nick West, who was there at 44.2 of a second. But the component parts now are really to get right, which are Torres, Pardon. Those, I think, are probably the most complex, certainly, to get absolutely right. Particularly when you come through from a Torres and you are approaching Pardon, you've got to keep that speed up to take you happily through Pardon, through the S's, and then up to Rolt Corner. Earlier, I know we had a number of non-competitive runs by a variety of individual cars and most interesting drivers and their cars. We had Ivan Dutton, of course, in the 1959 Morris Minor. Ivan is known amongst the Bugatti Owners Club, of course, as one of our major international Bugatti restorers with his son. He's raced and owned this particular car not in front of us, but a little earlier, which is the 1959 Morris Minor, and of course it was removed from long-term storage, as so many of these cars were. Well, this was obviously a pub somewhere in Manchester. Somebody obviously had a very good night, either forgot about it or spent too much money behind the bar and have to leave the car in lieu of that cost. The competition that you are seeing today gives them 2 runs in the morning and then their competitive runs in the afternoon. So each of these drivers will have a very careful analysis of where they picked up speed, where they may have lost it in 0.0 seconds or so, and to give them an idea of the flow of the track. But really it's putting that flow back into a substantial success from start to finish. This morning's runs, most of them in there, were dry on the first part, and although we've had that quick shower, that certainly has put a little bit of rain down, but it'll be fairly wet. Immediately they come into Pardon and they go through Midway and to the S's into semicircle. But by semicircle you're hitting at 1 or 2 drier spots, although the final apex before you hit semi and go for the finishing flag is again a little wet, because water runs from left to right, so it tends to pick up on the right hand side where you're putting your major power down to accelerate yourself out of that last corner and to go for the finishing straight and the finishing line per se. Earlier, of course, in the season the trees were bare. Now we've had the spring rain. Well, in fact, we seem to have had a lot of spring rain for some considerable weeks, I'm afraid. But those trees were very bare, but now They're fully clothed in their green leaves, which makes it scenically very exciting and beautiful, but it certainly means there's a lot more water on the track for these minis to deal with. This is the very first time we've invited the Mini Brigade and Gang, whichever they like to call themselves, to Prescott en masse. This is Graham Gonzalez. Graham is principally a rally man for a great number of years, but his wife for many years was his navigator, but he's come now to hill climbing, so of course he comes with some considerable experience of having competed in major events in Europe and England and the Isle of Man in rallying. So water does not bother him. In fact, looking at that approach to Parton, you can well see that he's a well-conversed man in most road surfaces, and this is a track with a nice piece of tarmac coming into rolled corner, beautifully handled. Rear wheel just lifting very gently on the inside of rolled corner. If I was critical, I would say it's slightly wide coming through the final part of semi, but he'll have a good time. Let's have a look. 58.26. What I don't have for you is their respective handicaps or what their morning runs were. Julian Harbour coming through, doing a lovely sachet through midway, tackling the S's comfortably, and over semi. That'll be a very competent time, I would say, of 61.43 for John Kirby, and Julian Harbour will be finishing car number 59. We then have number 62, Jerry Walters, on the line in a lovely yellow with pink spats. Now that really is, it's more like it used to be a famous magazine. What was it now? With pretty girls on the front. Anyway, that was in pink, wasn't it? Pink and yellow. Julian Harbour, British Leyland Mini. Clubman 1340, very distinctive with that pink and yellow. Gallio, I think it was Italian, but in English I would call that custard yellow. Custard, of course, was made in Birmingham, wasn't it? The family used to live in Four Oaks. Gallons of custard. Because the hill has its own return road, it enables us as a club, that's the Bugatti Owners Club, to be able to run at least 2 cars on the track at once. A number of our other hill climbs, which are part of the championship, that's Shelsley, Loughton, Harewood, do not have return. So we've always had the substantial advantage of having 2, so we don't have to collect you at the top of the hill and then have a return with all of you coming down. We have a return road, so we're able to put probably a few more cars on the hill at one time. As they come up to the start, if those of you have not been to a hill climb before, you come out of the paddock and you're able on a small strip to be able to quickly warm up those front tyres. In the case of minis, although today there's been little warmth, I'm afraid, in that short start before you come up and present yourself to the 2 marshals at the start line. Number 20, which is a shared car with, let me look at my list, shared car with Mike Davies and Austin Mini Cooper S. What I don't have is the dates, but I got to put that power down in those little front tyres very carefully. I think Avon support the majority of cars, although Yokohama, I think, are the main sponsors of the Hill Climb Championship that they run, and most certainly those on the track. So some were wearing Bridgestones. Bridgestones, I was given the advice, they're roughly £200 per tyre, whereas Yokohama, I think, are mid-40s. So obviously a considerable difference in price. But on a day like today, I'm not sure, without talking to the experts and the individual drivers, how much difference that actually makes on a wet hill climb as ours is today. Always an opportunity to thank our marshals who look after us on all of these hill climbs here, held at Prescott. As you see, they're in orange, and we run a Prescott Marshal School where young boys and girls under driving age are invited, and they can come and work with us in the paddock under tutelage. And we have quite a number of boys and girls who join us every single year, probably because their fathers or grandfathers or mothers or sisters compete here. So it's part and parcel of joining the sport and enjoying it. And as you learn, you can come then out on the track, take over the individual areas, and of course you can go further than that, you can go to racing, and many of our hill climb marshals have grown to look after international and Formula 1 marshalling all over Europe. And I understand, in fact, the great majority of our marshals, certainly in the European Formula 1, come from the very start or the position of juniors and hill climbs. So if there are any boys and girls out there who'd like to come, we have a number of events coming forward this season. Make application to the club and we'll be delighted to help you and look after you, give you advice, training, and take care whilst you're understanding how the work works, and you'll be well and truly looked after, and hopefully you'll stay within the sport for many years to come. Number 72 on the track, David Taylor. This is a Mini Mark I Cooper. A Cooper S. Under the bridge, 45, just compared interesting enough with Clive Godfrey. He was a 43, I beg your pardon, so they were marginally within each other of that. The Tories, Clive Godfrey was an 18.86, which is very competitive, and he had a 62.87 on his timed run. Oh, a little bit of sun has begun to creep through the Gloucestershire's grey skies. That'll warm the track up with a little bit of luck. If it builds up a bit, we'll see the steam gently rising, although don't be deluded. I promise you, when you get to Pardon, it'll still be damp underneath the large trees. So an element of caution, but it's nice to see the cars coming forward to the start without windscreen wipers. Number 76 clearly is a man that has been here before. He approached the start line well on the left hand side, so you can see the first point of turning his wheel left will be almost at the point where he hits the bridge. So he'll save certainly 0.2 of a second. All of them are finding the start line quite difficult. Lots of slip on there. There's no mud, of course, but it is very slippy on that tarmac. Currently the club are saving money with regards to looking at the track surfacing, probably in about 2 to 3 years' time. And that'll be interesting because without doubt when tracks are resurfaced we see a very different change in timings. The red flag is out, which would indicate a possible incident up on the track. The only incident, in fact, is somebody came out of victorious and scrambled a little bit left and put a bit of the dust and gravel onto the track. So our two marshals are out there with a brush and a blower. So really that just meant that he came, that would have been number 76, went a little bit wide coming out of victorious. In fact, he locked up and his front wheel and rear left just tickled the outside of the tarmac and brought a little bit of rubbish back on, and the marshals are clearing that off because we don't want that on the track when the boys are coming through and ladies coming through. Thank you, marshals. There's another part and parcel of when you've covered your initial training here as a marshal, then you really are out on the track, and you'll be looked after and carefully advised what to do. You might be involved in brush, you might be involved in the car, may have an incident, and that'll be when the flag comes out to take care. Number 78 is on the start line. He's turned his engine off because it might have been getting a little bit warm, waiting for the track to be cleared. Number 78. Number 78 comes under the name of Graham Hill, Mini Cooper S. So somebody came from a racing family to put the word Graham in front of him. Start his engine, and he's passed to the Henny's Cider Championship. We have a number of championships we run here. One is the Henny's. And that runs over a number of the climbs within the West Midlands, which it would be Loughton Park, Shelsley and ourselves. And those are run over a number of weekends and would accumulate respective points in your individual class. And at the end of the year, obviously, if you won your class or compete in your class, you'll be brought forward and appropriate awards will be given. So there's lots of competition to be enjoyed. Graham Hill going through the S's with a 46.65. And I'll be approaching semicircle and will be competing his very first competitive run after this morning's, and he has a 64.42. What is interesting as a driver, if you look at your first 64 feet, it's quite interesting. There's quite a difference between the people who manage to get their Firstones or their Yokohamas down well and truly early. And that difference gives them that extra little bit of speed coming towards the bridge. And I sometimes think that first 64 feet to the bridge and the Tories really rather sets the style of run that you are going to make for the whole of the climb. Because on a climb of this tight circuit and relatively short length, it is very, very difficult to make up time that you may have lost initially. And you'll see that in the respective breakdown and times. Some drivers are able to achieve that, but it certainly puts the onus on courage rather than irritability at that point when you know you have lost. Very nice start from number 92, Hugh Paul, in a Mini Cooper 1600. Followed by a very similar car, number 93, which is John Wells. These are, of course, Cooper S's. Putting that power down a little early, a little bit of wheel spin, got it within the first 8 or 10 feet, managed to get good grip. Number 94, I suppose you'd call it a very dark navy blue or even black with a nice white roof. So this is probably the last generation of minis, I would imagine. What I don't have for you is the early 2 runs that they had in this morning, so I'm really running off the results this afternoon rather than those which they're about to provide to us. So those of you who have not been here to Prescott before, we run a number of schools whereby you can bring your car. It doesn't matter whether it's a racing car, a single-seater or a saloon car, or the car such as today, which are the varieties of minis. And you'll have very good teaching from a team of hill climb racers who've competed in many events. You'll be given a class initially to compose you the structure of the hill, the component parts of it, and they divide it down into the respective units that I've given you this afternoon, i.e. the first 64 feet, what you're doing to the bridge, Ettores, 101, Derek Kessel, that's a Maguire Mini Cooper S, 1360, sounding very sharp, followed by number 46, which is in probably a similar disguise in terms of a rollover bar, clearly highly lightened. The Mini Cooper Maguire was 3.09, so very swift. Now coming up to the bridge, lost a little bit of speed, it was 57, but he picked it up by the time he got to Ettores. Ettores was very efficient, 16.29, and Pardon 25.09. Very sweetly through midway, coming up to the S's and to semi. Let's see how he approaches semi. Looked a bit light. Yeah, very good time, 53.92. Well done, Derek. That's a very smart bit of timing. I don't know what that does in terms of handicap. I don't know whether they go on to handicaps. Here we have a beautiful Gallio yellow, number 103 with black roof, little with a fixed wing on its boot, lightened clearly. SW Adair tyres. Chunky exhaust coming out from the rear left-hand side, clearly lightened windows, those plastic windows with little holes just to keep him warm. Nice bit of grip. Let's see what his, 3.60. This could be a very competitive time between the two. Let's see how he approaches under the bridge. Coming up to Ettores. Ettores is a very difficult 3-part component. Beautifully swung through, popping down, coming up to Ettores. Nicely through Ettores, very sweet. Clips the inside of the corner, going through the S's. This will be a very competitive time. Yeah, I think we might see 42.72. Little wide coming out of Rolt corner, but picked it up. Semicircle at 50.41 and a 58.62. That'll bring a big smile to his face. A very competent run, particularly bearing in mind areas of the track which are still extremely wet underneath the trees through S's and to Rolt. Stuart Lugger under the bridge coming up to Ettores. little bit of a puddle down the bottom as you come from Torres to Pardon on the right hand side where the waters come off the hillside. Just picks it up a little bit. You can see the front wheels just slipping a little fraction, maybe a little bit further on the left hand side if I'm being absolutely accurate with my placing of my car. Cars tend to go just a little bit light coming from Bridge into Torres, drifting across, tucked well in 108. 108 is driven by Tom Shepherd, Maguire Mini. That was a very competent attitude in Torres. Could be a good climb. Midway 36.79, coming through the S's, a 42.07. He's merely got the semicircle now to complete, and he'll have a time of, it's going to be late 58s, yeah, 57.31. Excellent time. He'll be proud of that. Big smile on his face. If the weather changes, which let us hope it should not, that would be probably well in terms of his class. Our marshals, when you come up to the start line, for those that this is a new venture, there's a white line, and if you're a little bit ahead of it, they gently push you back, and then they put a foot underneath it. Not the marshal's foot, that is. It's a wooden foot, so the car doesn't slip back, but it means the make and break of the start line is not ventured across until he actually releases the gear, pops it into start and accelerates away. Although accelerations here on the front is still very wet. Well, it's getting a little drier. The number of cars we're having backwards and forwards now is beginning to dry up this certain section. But now a little bit of blue sky is not revealing as yet the sun for us. As I'm not a mini, I was going to say avocado. I don't mean an avocado. That's something delicious. I might have it tonight with prawns as a starter. But a aficionado of minis. I only had one mini in my life, and that was a black Cooper Bristol, a black Cooper S. I think I was about 19, and I had made a little bit of money in London. And I took it to North Wales, where the family had a house at Harlock. And then I was working in London, and I drove it back. And it stopped 2/3 the way home, probably coming over the mountains, thoroughly enjoying it, and stopped to have a coffee in one of those little cafes where up in the mountains, some cafe. Anyway, came back to the car, and the two front wheels were pointing east and west. So obviously I think it was a drive shaft had gone, but it had decided to go and leave me there rather than leave me on the road at speed. So I think that was the last time I saw that car. I think it was picked up. I think I probably rang father, and he probably orchestrated it and put it down to one of my other adventures in cars over my lifetime. I don't actually know where it went, but it was thoroughly enjoyable for a few months.
So here we have our 1985 Classic Mini. This is a hill climb and sprint car. The block and gearbox is original Classic Mini. The cylinder head is from a BMW motorcycle. So it's a bit of a hybrid. The conversion's been coming along for the last, I'd say, 10-15 years, and it's now become quite a popular conversion. Makes the Classic Mini more drivable like a modern road car. The 16 valve, even though it's a race engine, actually drives like your normal road car. It's really surprising. This car itself is the 2016 ASWMC Sprint Championship winning car. It also won 2 other championships, the Cornish Speed Championship and the Central Southern Speed Championship. So the car's actually had quite a lot of success. We don't get it out very much anymore. The car's come out for the first time in 18 months. Unfortunately, myself and Dad have swapped to little single-seaters, but it's always a pleasure driving this. The engine itself, 150 horsepower at the moment. The old one was 175, so quite a bit more poke. It revs to 9,000 RPM. It is a bit of an animal to drive, or you have to be an animal to drive it, one or the other. But it always puts the biggest smiles on the faces. It really is. It's such a beautiful machine to drive, and to drive it fast is massively rewarding. Today here has been fantastic. It's such a tight and twisty place, Prescott, and that's where this car is in its element. And even though this morning we've had a few running issues, it has felt like it's on rails. It's just a fantastic machine.
My name is Alex Kinsman. This is my 1965 Wolseley Hornet. As you can see, it's got safety car written down the side. It's only a sticker, it's not painted on. And it was applied for the 2019 Goodwood Revival, where this was one of the safety cars. It's got very few miles on it at the moment. It's basically got set up for four-wheel alignment and then trailer to Goodwood, and it was run in going around the track. This is only its second public appearance. There's been a few eyebrows from the marshals going, "That's not the safety car." And I went, "Not here." Has been elsewhere though. Parked it next to Elfrod today so that we can exchange notes, because I've de-seamed the front end. It's basically been built as a Grand Tourer with hot rod elements and a few different styling cues. So we're gonna share notes.
Okay, this is my 1965 Riley Elf, commonly known as Elfrod, for obvious reasons. As far as I know, it's the only Roadtrex conversion in an Elf in the world. I don't know, might not be, but it's been done for a couple of years now. So yes, running 1293 MPI engine and block, a remote gearbox with the Magic Wand diff housing on the back, so I've still got the old Magic Wand inside. Currently running about 122 horsepower, and I have got a graph to prove it. So I know a lot of people claim horsepower figures with no proof, but I have proof, yeah. So it's not too bad, goes quite well. A few little more things to do on it, and obviously the dreaded rust is coming back now after 8 years of this paint scheme, so it may get changed, it may go back the way it is, I don't know yet. So
I won last year. I thought I ended up trying to get over.
Thank you for that. We have our roving microphone in the paddock, which is always interesting because it enabled us to go and talk to the individual drivers and give just a little bit of space to them rather than the 55-60 seconds which I'm allowed on the hill sometimes, which of course I tend to concentrate on 1 or 2 cars and I miss out others. If I do, I'll try and collect all of you later on, but it is quite difficult, so if I miss out on you, I assume, and I'm sorry for that. So one little Austin Cooper in the paddock is John Picks, which is the second Mini Cooper S produced, and is the probably one of the oldest surviving, because some of the cars did not survive very long in hands of young gentlemen and ladies enjoying such a wonderful cars. That particular one, which has come a little, I think it's number 24 on your competition, was restored from a bare shell to its original condition. Originally part of the press demonstration fleet, which of course featured in all our magazines, which I imagine most of us read, which are motorsport, for probably one from school days, back to a standard on the build, which was British Motor Heritage Standard, the 1997 Essen Technica Classical Exhibition. Campaigned up throughout the Midland Hill Climb Championship, of which Shelsley and Prescott are of course the main components of that. 50 years, 2013, celebrated with a visit to Longbridge, so the little baby was taken back to where it was born. Birmingham and Oxford, of course, are the main birthplaces of these wonderful cars. I suppose there was always competition between the two, actually, between Birmingham and Oxford. I presume it would show on your logbook where the individual car was made, and then there's always a tussle who produced the best machine out. Was it Oxford or Birmingham? So effectively badge engineering, I suppose. Highly competitive little cars came out in the mid-50s. But of course the 61 was when the first Cooper came out. Cooper S was circa a little later, I think it was a couple of years later, 63, when the cc size was increased to 1071 cc. That's of course when we really, I suppose, saw the car being competitive on the competition and rally front with the great component of Paddy Hopkins. I think from memory that they were always turned out in red and white. I may be incorrect in there, and if I am correct, then somebody please advise. And of course they were fighting then against the wonderful Ford Falcons and the Citroëns in the great French rallies of that particular time. And of course 1966 was probably the highlight of the Mini success on the Monte Carlo when they came in first, second and third. That was the cc there had risen then to 1275 S. Then of course came the question of the French. The French had had their noses well and truly rubbed in the gravel over that particular weekend, and they put forward the question of that dubious dispute. So that was questioned and looked at, and I think the final element of disqualification, if I'm absolutely correct from talking to one of the two of the experts this morning and this afternoon, was that apparently because the headlights could dip, there was hence a disqualification. So as a result of that, a Citroën was declared the winner. I suppose you could call that a scoop for the French. Anyway, Paddy Hopkirk and his co-driver were subsequently invited back to the Palladium and exhibited with great honour to the British public, and he explained how he had finished first, second and third with his team, and then obviously been disqualified by the French. So I think in retrospect we did pretty well out of that particular event, and there was no embarrassment. In fact, we probably achieved greater than that, and actually the winning rally itself. And actually I'd like to talk about that with Paddy if we manage to meet in the next couple of months and listen to that lovely Irish grin and smile on his face when he would recount the story with greater accuracy than I have just given to you. Right, back to what we're doing here at Prescott. We have Louise Wren on the hill in the Rover Mini Cooper 125S. Very competently through a Torres, 19.89. So we're now coming up to the semicircle, finishing semicircle, which will probably give her a mid to late 60s. Yes, a 66.92. Good, sweet run. Matt Webb in the Austin Mini. just finishing at Tories at 18.56, Midway is 39.38, so he'll be putting up a good time. This would all suggest that they're beginning to have dry patches on certain parts of our climb. Certainly looking at Tories and looking at Rolt Corner, I can see an element of dry patch coming up. Get off that line and it's a little bit slippery. Let's see how he comes up to Tories. Took Tories very wide. He's obviously put his indicator out to go right, but it's going to be a left in a minute, sir. I would suggest, if you think about it, put your left as you come into Rolt. No, he's still declaring he's going right. A bit wide into Rolt, but then I'm being very critical sitting here in the commentary box. A little wide as he comes up to the final semicircle. So Paul Holloway with a 66.99 in car number 11. Steve Wareham is midway coming up to the S's. S's is tackled at a 41.55. His first 64 feet was 3.38. Very competent. Jeremy Jones, very sharp, 2.98 in the GTM Coupe 1380, number 17. Nice bit of traction coming up to Pardon. Let's see how he approaches Pardon. Critically, I would say a little bit left, maybe a couple of feet, maybe 18 inches to the left-hand side. He'd have made a little bit of gain on the climb, but it's nicely dry coming through the S's. His midway period, Pardon, 25.47, midway, 37.89, putting in a good run, 43.56 on the S's, and semi, 51, so he will be just tickling under the 60s, possibly, yeah, not quite, 60.49, very good run, very good run. That car's clearly got an opportunity of looking well on his second run if the temperature and the rain, in fact there's more blue sky up there now, which is great. Number 45 on the line. Number 45 is the driver. I apologise, I haven't got 45 on my list. 45 is Hugh Turner, Austin Mini 1380. Brilliant colour scheme. Looks like one of those bullseyes that you use for rifle shooting at Bisley. Obviously a racing man, a little kiss on his bumper, on his rear boot. Number 49 coming up to the line. These are clearly going up in terms of performance. We're in class 3, which would indicate the maximum minis we're going between 1430 and 1500 cc's. Hugh Turner, Tories was 17.11. He's coming through midway now and approaching the S's, almost 2/3 to the S's, coming through to Rolt Corner. And into semi, a 48.81. Nicely clipping the inside, firing through the finishing line, a little wobble, very good time, 56.90. This would all indicate that there are certain parts of Prescott which are beginning to dry out. Don't be disillusioned, I promise you through the S's it is still pretty damp, particularly coming up to Rolt. If you get Rolt absolutely correct, you'll find a very nice dry line, as indeed Mike Edwards has. He'll be just the late 50s, might just tickle in. No, he lost a little bit on S's and semi, a 61.85, but I would still be very proud of that. That's good timing. So we're now into sharing some of the shared cars, hence the number on the side, which gives the 7, so that's a shared car, I beg your pardon, Simon. Simon Cox, 7:01 on the line, Austin Mini Ritz. That's rather fun, the Ritz. I haven't been down there with regarding to lockout for a while. The Ritz is really rather fun for dinner, I tell you, or even afternoon tea actually. You could leave your car outside, it'll be delivered, and away you can have a delicious scone, a variety of teas. Actually, talk about variety of teas. I remember my very first time going to New York and then going further up the coast, and we had a breakfast tea. I think there were 25 breakfast teas to choose from, and the waiter very competently went through every single tea that you could have, whether it was Darjeeling or a very high blend or a low blend or a mountain blend. I mean, wonderful. Anyway, being slightly smiled at him, I said, that was wonderful. Can you go through and give us a description? And everyone raised their eyebrows. Anyway, the waiter went through the 25 particular leaves that were used in teas, a beautiful description, and then one of my co-partners said, I think I just have English tea, thank you, sir. And there was a gasp from all of us. We smothered a smile, but the American waiter was not in any way disgraced by his performance, and we clapped him as he went away. Right, number 24 on the line, which is John Pick and Austin Cooper S. 3.95, interesting enough compared to David West just before him, was a 3.89. So you can see if you can get off that start line, which is getting drier and drier. Many of the early drivers here are starting on the far right hand side, whereas the reality is, if you, as I early indicated, one or two of the faster boys who've been here before move well to the left hand side on the make and break of the lighting, and then you can really put power down without taking any change in the wheel direction almost until you get to the bridge, whereas you've noticed here he's already beginning to turn slightly. Well, that's going to lose you maybe 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 of a second from here to the bridge. And getting that bridge approach, for instance, John Pick to the bridge was 41, where Luke Carroll, who's just gone away, was 47. So you can see the imaginative difference. Now you compound that for the rest of the hill, and that'll give you a time well in excess of 60, where some of these boys are well capable of nudging it down in the early 60s, and that's the difference between first, second and third. But I'm being very, very critical on that, and as I'm sitting in a nice warm commentary box, not sitting in the Mini Cooper S on the front line in a slight damp, thinking, now how am I going to string this all together like a pearl? I want it to go on a string of pearls from here to the finishing line. I don't want it to slip as I lift the clutch up. I want no wheel spin. I want delicate power, sweetness of my right foot, and away. And then I want to change just before I hit the first part of the break between tarmac and grass on the right hand side, and then I can accelerate towards the bridge, get it well into second gear, and then launch myself in that lovely soft drift as I come up towards Ettores. Ettores, of course, was the name of Bugatti, our famous instigator of the Bugatti car and the Bugatti Owners Club. He and his son came here in 1937, 38, actually no, beg your pardon, 38 and 39. And his father presented a cup to the club, which we have in our exhibition area. And of course it's the Bugatti Owners Club who are your hosts today. Stephen Aikers, the Morris Cooper, has attempted pardon well, 29.73, midway of 40, so he's going to be a late 60s probably, a late 60s. Let's see how he approaches semi, very wide but caught it nicely, came out of semi a 53.13 and a 62.32. Yep, I think you can tidy that up a little bit better next time. You might well hit a 61 point something. Good climb, very good climb. Nice to see a little Riley elf here competing against the great boys of minis. 1380cc, 3.76 on the first 64 feet, Tony Salter, under the bridge at a 41, so he got lots of grip compared to Steve Harris, which is a 44. So those minor 0.1.2 make all the difference as you approach the Tories. Get a Tories absolutely right, and it is a very difficult 3-part corner, and then you can plunge down towards Pardon. As you come up to Pardon, you think, ooh, do I brake? No, I move gently to the right hand side, carry my speed forward beautifully, gently, cut well into Pardon, and then onto Midway and onto the S's. And then it really starts to flow. But it is the flow, it is real flow here. You can't take it in component parts. It's like spinning a web. Get it right and you produce the most wonderful web, and you can smile as you go over the start and finishing line. Getting nice and dry and coming into the S's. Lots of power, number shared car in 741. That's Ben Bondfield in a Mini 1380, a 3.38. Good first 64 feet. You can see this, it's not really a little bit of sun coming through, but the temperature has risen probably a couple of degrees or so. There's no wind up there, waving those early spring trees which have blossomed in the last 3 or 4 weeks under the heavy rain. The advantage to the drivers is that upon their finishing of their respective climb, they can come back and look at the various component parts of the drive to see where they have gained, lost, or not really made the best use of the car and their driving ability on the various elements. But it enables you to see how you can put together the string of pearls that makes the perfect drive. And it depends on your view on a perfect drive. Not necessarily a win, it's just the sheer competence that you put together the hill, and it's a very complex hill, very much so compared to some of the others. Shelsley, which I know many of you have competed upon, is a real fast drive. It's only when you get to the very top, you have the S's that you swing through, a bit like sachet going onto the dance floor. You get your component parts, this time a car, not a pretty girl, but you get it absolutely right and you can whiz over the finishing line at Shelsley with a big smile on your face. But get it wrong and you think, oh, I haven't got the opportunity of recovering. No hill climb gives you the opportunity of recovering, I'm afraid. It is really, you've got to swing it together like a string of pearls. 43, beautifully through Pardon, very competent. Found a nice dry spot, moving slightly over to the right hand side for Pardon. Very climb, just clipped the inside coming through into the S's. Be a good climb. Let's have a look. What's he doing? Yeah, 27.43, Midway 37.88. Very competent little drive that from Mr. Clark. The 50.44, and then it's that race for the finishing. You think at times actually coming around semi, you think, where is that finishing post? I know it's somewhere, and your foot is hard down and you cannot, and then suddenly it's there and you're finishing and you, heartbeat goes down and you can quietly sink back on the car, and then they think you've got to stop because then you've got finishing the climb and there's an awful lot of tarmac track ahead of you. Of course, I could make the vital comment that everyone is driving extremely competently on what is quite a wet little bit of track. But that is normally a dangerous comment to make from a commentator. Shane Parry taking his Morris Mini Mine up competently in a sort of slightly burnt orange. Very wide coming through Pardon and hitting midway, swinging it about. Let's see how he tackles semicircle. Coming through semi, very wide, don't mind to get the power down and over the line, and it will be 59.94. How interesting. I would have put him more than that. Clearly managed to keep that power down, even though he was weaving his rear end a little. Right, number 58 on the line, John Kirby. Mini Clubman, 1380. We've all had Clubmans, haven't we, in various guises. I must admit, I have to admit, after my first Mini, which I told you about, which was a Mini Cooper S, I went to a number of Morgans. A little 4.4, a +4, a +8. And then, of course, I found the girl I wanted to marry when I was 26, 27. And the Morgan was sold, and that went on the engagement ring. I'm able to say, however, that the engagement ring is still on the same girl I married 47, 48 years ago. But I never managed to go back and buy a Morgan, although there are a number of other cars in my stable now which I lend out to those who drive far more competently than I do, which is great, so I can commentate upon their performance rather than somebody like myself commenting about myself and my performance. Possibility. I have a lovely from the timekeeper. Now, if you boys are really sensible and you stay on the black track, they are going to give you a third run, okay? Now that's going to be a Christmas present from our timekeeper. Thank you, sir. No, he's now shaking his head. No, he does give away chocolates at the end of the day. Oh, thank you, sir. There we are, boys. If you behave yourselves, you might just be in. Mind you, it will cost you all. How much is it going to be? A pint tonight for each of us? Yeah. Or in your case, probably a nice Scotch whiskey. Right, Graham Gonzalez. No, that was Graham, sorry, not timekeeper, Hill Control. He's the one who says you're behaving elegantly, well, or incompetently. And I'm the one that enabled to say which of those adjectives is describing you. I rather like this pink and Gallio yellow. No, it's rather fun. Nice rollover bars inside, so he clearly does a bit of rallying. Little wide spats in pink. Very sharp, sounds good. Don't know what sort of brake horsepower. I know some of the speedy boys are 150, 160 plus brake horsepower. That really is a lot of power to be able to put through those tiny little mini light wheels. In fact, talking about brake horsepower, I was given a little bit of information early on before we came. Historical racing, a company called Swift Tune. There's a car here in the paddock which is suggesting, I talked to them a little earlier on, and they have a Swift Tune twin SUs, and he was describing to me how the twin SUs work. I mean, twin SUs to me would be with 4 ports going into your engine, but in fact they cut them down to 2, so it gives a better flow. Something like 150 or so brake horsepower out of a little 1275cc must give some grunt and some power, but you do have to pay for that fairly substantially, somewhere into the mid-20s to get that. The more acceptable, I think, was a split Weber, which was, I think it gave you another extra 5 horsepower. Those of you who believe I've got that mixed up, please tell me, but I think from the notes I was talking to, I have put that down correctly. But of course that sort of power was subsequently beaten by the Ford Escorts that came out, and I suppose to a certain extent that saw the demise of the success and the winning ability of Minis for some time, although now we see them competently run in their own respective class in providing huge enjoyment both on track, hill climbs and sprints, as we are indeed seeing them here today. I've got a further note in terms of that power. Most of them can rev up to something like 8,000 plus, which is pretty substantial. I don't think in the little Mini Cooper S that I had, it probably went over about 5.5, 6. No doubt by that time I was probably frightening myself anyway on those Welsh roads coming back to Birmingham and then driving back to London late at night to start my job with a company called J. Walter Thompson in Hanover Square, who are a huge advertising company. Right, number 70 on the line now. Roy, open brackets, Bod Balterson. I like the way Bod, that's rather fun, isn't it? 3.41, very competent first 64 feet. Lost a little bit by the bridge, down to 53. Whereas Mike Davies earlier, the car before was a 45, so a little bit of wheel spin between there and then. He's picked it up, however, on the Tories, 17.54. So he's clearly going forward. Andy Walkinshaw's just gone off the line in 70. I wonder if he's part and parcel of the family of Walkinshaw. Of course, they had one of the major agencies here in Cheltenham for many years, and that's a name that you and I would associate with Le Mans and racing and Jaguar and extraordinary successes from that independent name. Wonderful stories. Must be a Roy Balderson, 56.46. That is a very competent set of times looking through that. Halfway was 36.51. S is 41.43 and semicircle 48.34. Very competent piece of mini driving, I would say. Walkinshaw's put in a 59.52. Lost a little bit between Midway and S's. S's he was good, 43.78. But lost a little bit on semi, which I'm not surprised. It's quite daunting, frankly. That was a 51.404, whereas Roy Balderson was a 48.31. So you can see if Andy Walkinshaw had kept up the same pattern of success earlier on and tightened it up on semi, he would have been very competently near Balderson. David Taylor is on the hill. He's just finishing on his S's, coming through semi. It's gone a bit blank. No, here he is, coming through final S's and to semi, and a 60.19. Proud of that. Good climb, because he lost a little bit between the bridge and his Tories, which is always difficult to pick it up, but he competently did, so well done, sir. You kept your power on and kept your courage going. Number 74, Michael Ruff on the line. This is a John Rhodes and Barry Wizzo car that competed at Goodwood and won the St Mary's in 2003 on a dry day. Now I tell you, that takes some doing. If Wizzo and John Rhodes were there fighting, that would have been a wonderful day to watch them going round Goodwood. I mean, Wizzo was a great competitor here for many years. A very charming, charismatic individual. And I'm sure there are many people who managed to watch him race over the years. He was always fun to have in the commentary box and a legend of stories. He was very much a man that could be put into a car and drive it exceedingly competently, very competitively, and managed to stretch more energy out of it than in many cases the actual owner of the car itself. He was a huge fun gentleman to interview. There were some lovely photographs of he and I interviewing here at Prescott and at Shelsley and other tracks. A wonderful character, an extremely modest individual, a good raconteur, could tell you stories about his racing history over the many years they competed. I suppose probably greatest fun when he competed at Goodwood, which he loved. And he was always good for a talk and a laugh, and a great loss to racing and hill climbing and to companionship. Number 92 coming up to the line, Hugh Paul, the Mini Cooper 1600, clearly knows this hill because he's positioned himself well on the left hand side of the hill. Very quickly got the chock underneath, waiting for the little green light to give him a go. In the meantime, we've got Graham still on the hill in the Cooper S 1600. Pardon 27.63 under the bridge of 52. Had a good start the first 64, 33.46. S's is 42, very competently coming through at Tories, just a little swing right, lost maybe 0.2, 0.3 of a second, coming up to semicircle. It'll be just a tickle under 60. Oh, in fact, very competent, 57.97. Number 92 on the hill, Hugh Paul, coming down to Pardon, taking slightly wide line, cutting in nicely. That dappled sun on the very corner has really dried out that corner now. But the danger is, of course, you come in with a slightly wet, slightly dry, slightly wet. But there seems to be plenty of grip on those front wheels of this Hugh Paul Mini Cooper 1600. Ethan Brayshaw, that brilliant white, I think they called it Old English white, with the black roof, sun dappling on it as he comes through Prescott. Prescott always, all our hills look best, of course, in the glorious sunshine, which we've been rather cheated on so far this year, but I'm told the long range tomorrow onwards we should have some real warm sun coming up for the rest of our events very shortly. The bonus of running at Prescott is that because we have a return road, we can get almost 3 cars on a hill at one stage, which is great. It makes for fun as a commentator, though, I tell you, because normally we have 3 commentators, one here down at the start line, and then on the top of the hill where you can look across towards Tories and Pardon. And then, of course, they disappear into the S's, and you only pick them up again when you finally when you see them broaching in the sunlight towards semi. But it does help to have 3, So today you have one, so I'm running my commentary for you all on the screen. So if I miss little bits, I'm looking down and looking at the time and trying to be as competent as possible for you. Our start line is really starting to dry out now, which is great. So a lot more grip. 101 coming to the line. John Davis on a shared on the Austin Mini Cooper. This is 101, this beautifully lightened Maguire Mini Cooper. Maguire. Isn't that I think that's is that an Irish cider? I think it is. I may be wrong. Very lightweight with those wonderful lightened wheels. Well, I think that was somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 revs. His first, yes, it has to be. The first 64 feet is 2.99 coming to the bridge. Oh, beautifully handled. Coming into Ettore, very competent. Lots of grunt, that little bit of downhill, picking up that damp. Just a flick of water on the outside wheel. Into Pardon at 24.36. Through, midway through the S's. Coming up to Road Corner, coming up to semicircle. This is going to be a fast time. Beautifully handled. It's going to be a 52.75. Very, very, very competent climb that. Well tackled, well tackled. Actually, it's 52.73. I wonder where the other 2 points went. Well, I wouldn't argue with the timekeepers. They're absolutely right. Anyway, that at the moment looks like to me as though it's going to be nearing what will be FTD of the day, fastest time of the day, young Derek Kessel, but there's stuff to come. 103 on the line, Ian Howard. This is the Maguire Mini 1380. First 64 feet is 3.25. This could be a competent drive. Up to the bridge 49. Aggressive looking yellow front, hiding presumably Weber's or something similar. Right, let's see. Oh, sorry. Ian Howard on the Maguire Mini. Let's say 55.24. Now, where did he lose his... That, how interesting. I thought he was on for a snatch win then. I think he lost it between Pardon and Midway. I know he came out slightly wide of Pardon, maybe, but never mind, we've got time for him to come back. Apparently after the last runs, we're going to be able to have... Well, first section of runs, we're then going to be inviting back some of the earlier cars. 108 on the line, Tom Shepherd. This is the Maguire Mini 1300. Yes, where is the green light? Selecting first gear, lovely lightened body, little wings. Nicely off the start line, we are getting dry. Let's see what his first 64, yes we have, that's 3.00, that is the fastest first 64 feet we've had today, up to the bridge 56, which is odd because the Stuart Lugger just prior was 52. Come on Mr. Shepherd, let's see what you do for Ettores. I want under 18.06, well done, 16.46 up to Pardon. 25.02, so he's galloping it, he's dragging that little mistake he must have made. 33.70 at midway. S is a 38.35. This is going to be a very good, slightly wide outer rope corner. Clip it in. Come on, clip it in at semi. Put the power down and go for the finishing line, which is dappled in sunshine. 52.91. Good run, sir. Very good run. As you have been so efficient, we're now going to be able to run after the last boys in this particular run. We're going to be able to have another exhibition of wonderful minis up and down. So we'll give the final exhausting second runs to those after this other exhibition of our minis. 111 on the line. This is Ant Lucas, Mini Cooper. There's a red flag out. That would suggest that Neil Stark put a little bit of rubbish up onto the line. Yes, our sweepers and our marshals, although at this stage they're groundkeepers, a bit like going back to your golf club. Those are watching golf, of course. We're watching one of the big USA matches at the moment. Nice sweeping, gentlemen. Good brush stance. That's a nice shot. Red flag. Yep, red flag all the way up. Thank you, marshals, for being across there and looking after us today. You can, of course, join the marshals, and it's a very good way of getting into hill climbing and to racing. They'll start you off with training in the club, and you'll be well looked after and advised starting in the paddock, and you'll be given guidance on that, and then you'll be released onto the hill in various elements. Red flag is being released by our marshal down here at the start. We are a well-run Hurst. Yep, they're waving to each other. That's it. Flag down. Thank you, marshals. In their distinctive orange jackets with their various badges on. You can see the clubs they belong to, or more important, looking across. Well, I've got a Morgan there. I've got a Ferrari. I think that is a VW. The other one I'm not quite sure about. Anyway, whatever it is beautiful badges. So you can see that either those are the cars he has in his stable, which of course it could be, or the cars that he'd like to have in his stable. I'm not sure which is which. Right, 790, which is one of the shared cars. This one in the hot seat is Jason Brayshaw. This is the BMW Mini Cooper S. On the BMWs. We've got I have to hesitate here. We have 750, but they're both blanked out. Let us assume it's 750. It's 790, in fact. No, I beg your pardon. I'm making a bit of a hooli of that at the moment. 790 is Jason Brayshaw, who's on the hill. And Neil Slark, S-L-A-R-K, is off the line now. this is a lovely bit of dappled sun coming through our estate of Prescott, or the Bugatti Owners Club. And of course we have many other events coming up during the summer, but as until our dear government and everyone agrees it is absolutely safe to invite you as our guests to come and spectate, we are currently and correctly carrying out under the current government restrictions of only drivers and their escorts and engineers to help. Right, thumbs up from our marshals. And this is going to be an exhibition of the various varieties of minis in all their respective calibers. And I think I'll switch you over here just to give myself a short break to some of the earlier interviews that we had in the paddock during this morning, which was practice. So over to you.
My name's Graham Hill and I'm competing in the Henny Cider Pre-77 Hill Climb Championship. And this is my car, which is a 1966 Mini Cooper S. It's fully stripped out, prepared for HSCC Class D, but I've bought it from its previous owner, who was very successful with it doing the Masters Series, and now I've converted it for hill climb. My arch rival in the Henny Cider Series is Matt Clark, driving car 26 today. And during the last couple of years, he's always been much quicker than me. And I took the steps to decide to make my car a whole load quicker for this year. So as you can see, the bonnet is not as it ought to be, and we've converted the car from 1300 to 1500 cc. We've added some bits and pieces into the engine, in as much as we have a factory cross-flow cylinder head with Weber carburetors. It's got titanium conrods, dog range change gearbox, and it's dry sumped, which is most unusual for a Mini. So all this is my great attempt to beat Matt Clark. And today, much to my chagrin, he is 0.3 of a second ahead of me, and I'm not at all happy. So I've got to drive a whole load quicker, and it's not just down to the engine. The Henny Cider is a great series. There are many minis in it, and although we're competing against each other, we also compete against the Escorts and the Scimitars and the Imps. And there's a terrific collection of cars, and well worth coming to see. Next car along that you can see is Black Maguire Mini. A Mini in the very loosest sense of the terms. It only has the Mini front subframe and the Mini gearbox. This particular car's got a 16-valve KAD cylinder head and produces 160 horsepower. The reason it's here today is that we recovered it from Germany, where it's been asleep for 20 years. We've spent the last 3 weeks recommissioning it. And the guy in the dark glasses, who you can see is Tom Shepherd, and he built it originally in 1976, along with the yellow car here and the red car here, driven by Ian Howard, who's come from Ireland, and Derek Kessel, who lives in the south. The car has literally turned its first wheel in 20 years here today. And this is the first time that Tom, as the builder of the car, has actually driven his own creation. So he's really quite enthused today, although he doesn't look so. Because now it's all about the times. Derek Kessel is 4 seconds quicker than him in the red car, and now we've got to find every last second. The car weighs 420 kilos. It's basically a crisp packet over some Kit Kat wrappers. It's very, very light, and you can't push it anywhere because there are no strong bits on it whatsoever. So great day here today. I hope you enjoy all the minis.
Yeah, I'm Matt Clark. I drive a 1960 Austin Mini. Normally compete in the Henny Cider Bugatti Owners Club Classic Speed Championship. We've been having a battle now for a couple of years with Graham in the in FOP 4D. I think he's got a new engine this year, which he's invested quite a lot of time into, and it's sounding really good. I think the aim well, we've been pretty close for the last year or two, so I think the aim obviously is for him to pull ahead. So we'll see how that goes. This one, it's it's all been built. It's all road going spec, but it is quite exciting. It puts a grin on your face when you're driving. Especially one of my favourite parts of the track is through Orchard, where you can really get the car sort of drifting through there just before you get into a Tories.
So a bit more about the Hennies pre-77 and the regulations. The rules allow you to use any technology that was available pre-1977, which fits within the Blue Book regulations. The 8-port cylinder head that is on here, designed by Westlake, was done in 1966-67 for the Works Minis. There are very few of them available. The Works Sprites also use them as well. So technically it is legal. In the day, the fuel-injected cars, which would have used this cylinder head, would have not had the hole in the bonnet. But as far as hill climbing is concerned, that is a legal thing that is legal. All the technology that's available in the car is only pre-77. There is no mapped ignition. As you can see, it's got carburetors. The titanium con rods were forged on a Saturday afternoon in the original factory dyes in 1969 by Steve Neal's friends, who was working for Arden or driving for Arden at the time. So even the titanium rods are in period, although officially they don't exist. The dog change gearbox and limited slip diff were also available in services, so it qualifies now, as many of the Hennies cars do use that technology. Of course, we need to squeeze every last horsepower out of the Minis to beat the Escorts, because the Escorts run BDAs and BDGs, which are obviously 200 to 270 horsepower, and same as in period, the Minis were trailing behind them and had to work very hard to try and catch up. So assuming that I can manage to beat Matt Clark with this setup, the Escorts are next on the list.
Okay, so I'm Alistair Moffat. I'm 6 times British Auto Test champion. I've won championships over probably the last sort of 20 years, national and British. I was the only person to win a British Championship in the 50th year of the Mini, and then subsequently in the 60th year of the Mini. So it's still competitive in a national championship and that. The car's 1430cc. It weighs 420 kilos and it's got 100 brake horsepower, so it's good power to weight ratio. Yeah, so it's super lightweight. It's a form of motorsport called auto testing that I do, which has helped me in good stead for doing some world record attempts. So I hold the tightest forward parallel park, which I've had to basically do 3 times. I held it, somebody beat it, and then subsequently again. So I held it twice with a Mini, and then it's currently with a Fiat 500 at 7.5 centimetres combined gap front and rear. So it's a cross diagonal of a post-it note, basically spare gap. And then the most iconic one is I'm the guy who drove the Mini flat out across Brooklands car park in reverse, and then spun it, and then handbraked it in between 2 cars for a world record. So that's the most iconic thing. So that's my Usain Bolt moment, and that was pretty well first attempt. So I had a moment of brilliance, and it was lucky the world stage was there to watch it when it happened. So we're in the Guinness Book of Records as well with Mini. So I love them, been involved with them since I was 16. Competed with them since then. There's nothing better really. It's just an extension of myself. I can't dance, I can't do anything, but I can make a car dance underneath me, and it happens to be the Mini's the best thing to make that happen really.
I can add a little bit to that. You've just listened to Alistair, who is the husband of our Bugatti Owners Club competitor, and she runs the whole operation for us, with Matthew Pearce, who car number 73, and they have a history of sharing. Gemma, of course, was a world national co-driver with 8 points to her record before she came to join Prescott 18 months ago. And Alistair and Matthew Pearce competed in the Manx National 2004 in thick fog. Now, Alistair, you've just been listening to, is an extremely competent and extremely swift driver of any car. Anyway, they had thick fog, and the appropriate car that they were riding in a big one, enjoying that day, rolled substantially. They ended up with the glass exploding as they went down the hill, and Matthew was not quite thrown out of the car, but sufficient to say that he hit his head on the windscreen and there was an element of glass exploding. He was taken off then to the new Douglas Hospital on the island, and I find this the second element is really rather delightful. As he arrived, there was a brass band playing. Now, it's not normally something that when we boys or girls arrive at a hospital as a result of some mistake we've made, either in a car, on a horse or whatever. Anyway, apparently it was the opening of the particular hospital on that day. So Matthew was celebrated with a brass band as he went in. His initial thought, and I have to giggle at this, his initial thought was that maybe this is what I'm going to die of, my accident, and they're actually giving me a celebration before I go off to the mortuary. But it wasn't that, in fact, at all. It was the celebration of the opening of the new Douglas Hospital itself. And so I think between Matthew and Alistair, you could celebrate a particular event that has been recorded, but both of you got through safely. One or two of the other cars that we have here today, which is I've got Mark Foster down, a blue Mini Mark 1. This was a car newly built for hill climbs by Mark, who's been hill climbing minis clearly for many years. His home venue is, of course, Harewood, which is a classic up in the northeast. Absolutely cracking fun on the Harewood estate. Well worth going to see when they open it for people to go and enjoy. I managed to drive a little Morgan there some years ago, 20 years ago probably now, but a wonderful event, always great hospitality. The Mark 1 Mini features a supercharged 999C Cooper S engine, which is a brand new heritage body shell, which is now very, very popular with mini racers preferring to start out with brand new metal. Mark also runs a Mark 1 performance website dedicated to the tuning and competition history of our favourite little minis. Kent Thurley driving a 1966 Broadspeed. Broadspeed, of course, one of the great tuners of that particular period. At GTS, this one is. Ralph Broad was the brains behind this. Really, they are Cooper S's built in-house at his Broadspeed premises, which was Sparkbrook in Birmingham. And this one was built in 1965 using a GRP roof and camtail. The first car built was really a road-going prototype, as many of them were. The second being, of course, the racing version, with Broadspeed driver John Fitzpatrick, raced during the 1966. And I imagine many of us remember some of those wonderful shots of the Broadspeed being driven by Fitzpatrick on many tracks. After concentrating his business on mini tuning and preparation for the 63, Ralph switched to Ford, of course, machinery with huge factory support, and the Anglia, I do beg your pardon on that one, was really overshadowed by his efforts to market these pretty little cars, although in great numbers still are produced, and this one was being discovered in a sorry state in Holland some 15 years ago, restored and brought back to the UK. Guy Rogers is a 2020 Mini GP3. The GP3 was produced in, I think, a limited number. I think it was either 350 or 500. But this was the third incarnation of what effectively was the flagship by John Cooper Works Performance brand Mini manufactured at the original Mini plant, which of course was in Oxford. In, I think, 2020, the cars were effectively the very fastest Minis ever produced, producing some 306 bhp from a 2-litre turbocharged B48 engine. This was found in the M135i, putting up some 450 torque through an automatic gearbox in the front wheels. My golly, got to have a bit of rubber to keep that on the track. Guy was apparently the first to compete in one at Shelsley last year, finishing understandably in the first top 10, 5th in the top 10 runoff of the day. Only a 4-wheel drive car's beating a standard Grand Prix 3 or GP3 bagel fresh out of the box. Well, Guy, that is some production. I imagine we could see that on film from Shelsley because they keep records of such astounding performance. Right. We're still enjoying watching the non-competitive runs. Ooh, I can see ice creams being distributed to those in the box. Oh, why is the commentator excluded from a lick of vanilla ice cream with a chocolate bit in it? I thought I was doing a reasonable job for us. Obviously those who are on the highly technical side are those that are rewarded, not the commentators. Right, okay, I won't take offence, but I'll just go internationally out that I'm being excluded from delicious vanilla ice cream, because vanilla ice cream was made in Gloucestershire. Chocolate flakes, they're Cadbury's, they're made in Midlands. Cadbury's flakes, Cadbury's. They are Quakers, aren't they? And the 3 Quaker companies are Cadbury's. There's one in... No, I've lost my train of thought. I'll think about it very carefully. Thank you for marshals striding around in your orange suits. That was very courteous. One of our senior marshals giving me an elegant bow in his orange suit with his black face mask. I would have to say your hair needs a haircut, sir. Yes, he does. He nods that. Yeah, oh, definitely. He's raised his cap to me now. I'm always safe in the commentary box, though. Well, thank you for joining us wherever you may be. I imagine we're speaking to people in France, Germany, Italy, certainly the USA, and I imagine even as far away as Australia and New Zealand. We were certainly the other day. So thank you for joining us on this wonderful mini exclusive here at Prescott. Apart from that one little shower we had a little earlier on, which has now dried up, the track looks relatively dry, although it'll still be a little bit damp under the S's. But coming up to Rolt Corner, we know it'll be nice and dry for you. I have it down on my screen in front of me. We're still on non-competitive runs, although the car in front of me has got the figure 90 on it. Right. Our extremely competent team of Clerk of the Course and his team have advised that these are effectively fun runs, so they won't make any results to those that you've enjoyed your 2 runs. So they've come out and just enjoy a bit of fun. So Actually, it's always quite interesting to see whether a fun run produces a better run from their earlier 2 timed runs. And then you go home thinking, why didn't I manage that at the time? Probably because you lowered your heartbeat a little bit. Simon Cox and Terry Cox share 0-1 on the line with us now. This is an Austin Mini Ritz. Well, it might be a possibility to go and have dinner at the Ritz this year. I haven't been there for 18 months. I love the one where it looks over the River Thames. The river restaurant is absolutely lovely. Mind you, if you have a private dining room at the Ritz, you can really enjoy. You can have a guest, you can have, I think, from memory, we had 10 or 12. We had a couple of birthday parties down there. The Ritz is very grand, but very good. I'll give you one element of intimacy too. If you are able to stay the night, the bathroom or the baths are absolutely huge. I suppose I could say it over the air, but I've had 2 daughters and a son, and I managed, my 2 daughters were splashing around in a huge great bathtub in the individual bedrooms, and the water gushes out of the most enormous pipes, hot and cold, into the huge great bath. It looks like the sort of waterfall. Right, here we are, number 3, Benjamin Thorne. It should be interesting. The 3rd times will be recorded. It'll be given interesting to the actual drivers to see how they've actually improved over the day, although it is getting drier and drier, which is excellent for them. Mark Tooth had a 61.16. What I'm not able to give you is the comparative times of their earlier real competitive drives compared to these fun drives, which are just enjoy the hill, and of course it's really nice and dry on the start line, so they can get lots of grip. I imagine looking at that we were taking the rev counter up pristine somewhere between 5.5 and 6, maybe 4.8 to 5.5. I can't quite see on the rev counter. Selecting first gear, taking handbrake off. This is little bit of spin. Louise Wren, very competent start, 3.59. What I'm not able to give you is what their earlier runs were, how they compare for the competitive runs of 2 compared to the fun run of number 3. It'll always be interesting. I imagine people will go home and think, why did I place the car there, and how did I manage to get the extra speed there and lose it there compared to my competitive runs where I thought I really played it well. Such is the way. I think this is where you bring your heartbeat down to a competitive level rather than over rev it. Louise Wren was a 41.98 midway. Very competent run, young Louise. You're going to just break the early 60s. Yeah, very good. 63, 64, 65, 66, 67. Well done, 67.02. I think you probably enjoyed that. Number 60 coming to the line. John McQuillan will be coming up underneath the bridge, coming up to Torres. Nice dry run all the way through now. That's right, clip it on the inside a little bit, maybe another 18 inches on the right hand side for Torres. Coming down towards Pardon, swing it through, very competent. Nicely through, Mr. McQuillan. Dry all the way through S's now and midway. So you can really swing into the final semi, being competently comfortable. There's no wet line at all. Balderston was very bold coming out of Pardon. That'll be a good time. Yes, Torres, he was 17.17. That was an improvement on his second run, certainly. Up through semi, 47.36. He's just going to break, yes, 54.95. Trouble is, I can't give you the comparisons between these fun runs, and they have to be considered fun runs, compared to the competitive runs. I think this is always the bit where you actually beat your 2 runs early in competition, and you go home thinking, I should have reduced my heartbeat a little bit. Less chocolate for lunchtime, I would suggest, sir. Number 71 on the line is Clive Godfrey, Maurice Minor Cooper. David Taylor just about to finish his run over the finishing line. David West has finished at a 62.54. David Taylor's just finishing, coming through the S's with a 41.79. Nicely coming through the S's and through Rolt Corner in the dark, and then flashing into the brilliant afternoon sunshine. He'll just break, yes, 57.65. Very confident run, David Taylor. Clive Godfrey coming through the S's, coming through the Rolt Corner. Let's see how you tackle Rolt. Are you going to come in? Yes, nicely clipped on the outside. Inside to Rolt, lifted the rear inside. Way into the last bit of sparkling sunshine. Be over the finishing line. And a 59.15. Got now the little Riley Elf. Riley Elf, I always thought, was beautifully finished at the front with the Riley little radiator, but that funny little bubble boot. I know you could put more gear in it than a Mini, but it was a funny little hangover. It looked a bit like a carriage. Slightly ugly in my mind. Ben Bonfield on the Austin now. Number 40, nice takeoff. Lots of power, very swift. 2.86 on the first 64 feet. Up to the bridge of 60. How interesting. The Mini Cooper Van Lucas under the bridge was a 49. So where did Ben, having very good 64, lose out on that? Let's see what he picks up at Torres. Come on, Ben, let's see what you're doing. Very good, you made it back. 16.00. Pardon, 24.47. You picked it up. Are you going to break 60s? I would say you're going to be a 57.3 with a bit of luck. Coming into semi, not on your screen but on my screen. Coming over. The time is a 50, yes, they're very competent, 53.55. So if you made the bridge a 52, that would have been a 53.42. What I'm not able to do is give you these unrecorded times with regards to the 2 recorded times, just as a comparison. But that would make me as a commentator highly critical, would it not? I think that's probably something best discussed in the paddock later. Right. Oh, beautifully swung through number 109, Ian Stark. Gripped with those front wheels and swung the rear out beautifully. Pardon, the same. Right, Ian Stark, let's have a look. 26.97 mid-wave, 36.92, up through the S's, through Rolt Corner, coming up to semi. It's going to be a very good time for this particular class, 49.61. What's he going to do? Is he going to break 55, 56, 57? Yeah, 58.01. He'll be happy with that. What I can't give you is, of course, the comparison of his 2 competitive runs to these fun runs. 103 on the line, which is the Maguire Mini 1318. This will be a sharp time over the 64 feet. Yes, it was indeed. It's 2.62. I've now got a replay of number 70. I can see what happened. That was rather elegant. The driver's door opened, waved to his friends, and carried on. Actually, that takes some courage to wave at that particular corner. I don't think you ought to do it again. The Maguire Mini circulating very quickly. Be a good time, be a good time. 45.15 and semi, and it'll be, yep, cracking time, 52.64. Be happy to go home with that on his card. Number 94 coming to the line up while we have Andrew Brooks, the Austin Mini Cooper Mark II, just under the magic 1000cc. Well, it's still remaining nice and dry, a little bit of wind coming through, dark clouds, but they're very high. They must be 2,300, 2,500 feet. No aircraft coming through this afternoon. Sometimes on we have a competitive day, we have one or two little aircraft flying through from Cheltenham to see what we're up to, but apart from the odd seagull up there, there's a hawk of some description there having a hunt way up in the blue sky, or little bits of spats of blue sky. All the beautiful trees here at Prescott are now out. Blossoms, I'm afraid, have rather disappeared, but hopefully we'll have a good season for apples, plums and pears. We have some beautiful apple and plum trees tucked away in the paddock for later munching, I hope, in August when we have the VSCC as our guests here for 2 days. Jane Brayshaw, Mini Cooper S, 3.22. On the 64, Pardner's 26.78. Nice dry line coming through the S's now, of course. Well and truly dried. The shared cart with Simon Cox, the Austin Mini Ritz. Interesting shell. Very good first 64, 2.75. Lost a little bit between the bridge and the Tories, but he's picked it up in Pardon, 26.01. Competent run, nice through Rolt Corner. Little wide if I'm absolutely picky, but picking it up to semi could be a very good run. A little wide on semi, a little bit of smoke over the line, and a 57.35. You'd be comfortable with that. What I can't give him, of course, is the comparison between his two competitive runs post-lunch. Austin Mini Ritz. I haven't had dinner at the Ritz for 18 months now. Last time I was there, I managed to entertain both wife and my mother. I think mother was 94 and a half. And we had roast beef, the most delicious Yorkshire pudding, and then a cascade of Ritz ice creams, which were delicious. Strawberry, vanilla, and peach. I can't tell you what wine, I can't remember what wine we had. I'm sure we had a rosé. It was a summer party for my mother's 90-plus birthday party. Right, Claire Tooth in her little Mini 1275 was 61.09. She'll be happy with that. That's very well placed, Claire. Nick West is on shared car 721. Through the S's at 41.37. That's a good speed. Picked it up a bit in the semi. Swirled it round, just caught the inside, which will give him that little bit of boost towards the finish. And finished with a 57 dead. Well done, Nick. That's good. Luke Carroll, number 25, just off the line, and her Austin Mini 1071. Tony Bonfield was a 2.78 on the 64 feet. 64 feet is very important because it gives you that element of strike towards the bridge. The bridge does give you an element of hesitation because you're thinking, I know I'm going to go left. The road falls away fractionally to the right hand side. So don't look at the bank on the right, look at the bank on the left, and you know you'll be okay. Then you approach the Tories absolutely on the mark. Richard Keane in the little Mini Cooper, 2.99, bridge 45. For instance, that compares to Luke Carroll, 48. So you can see the difference. And also the positioning here on the start line. Start further and further on the left-hand side. And that means you can take from here to the bridge almost as a direct straight line. It's only at that point you can start edging your steering wheel to go left as you come towards a Tory, or approaching a Tories, I beg your pardon. It's also one of the best places to go and watch, actually, too, between a Tories. Number 74, this is Michael Bruff, Cooper S 1380. Clerk of the course going across to have a quiet look. Checking everything is correct, all the doors are shut. Yep, happy with that, nodding approval. It's a glorious opportunity to thank all of you who actually help here on a motor racing day. Those are the marshals out there in their delicious orange, and you can see how long some of them have been working here in their orange. They're beginning to fade a little. One or two of them have got a slight rotund tum, I can see, looked after by a large belt. Those in the paddock marshalling everyone competently forward. Number 70 is Andy Walkinshaw, who was good enough to give me some really wonderful information when I came here today, because normally I hopefully sound reasonably competent when I'm doing the VSCC and the historic pre-1939. So I was asked to deal with this afternoon because your commentator, who is far more worldly than myself, of post-war, was taken ill this morning. So I was able to ask Andy Walkinshaw first of all, and of course he gave me some lovely... I'd forgotten that the Beatles had 4 Lynx Minis in their particular time. Crawford's produced the 57 Heinz cars, and they actually gave away 57 cars, which I thought was a wonderful advertisement for the company. And they were obviously convertibles. Austin and Morris, which were obviously at BMC. The 2 branches, or the 2 main, are Birmingham and Oxford. I don't know whether the Oxford one is still open in terms of specialist works on minis, but never mind. The little wing spats on number 64 give the Mini a much more aggressive stance, don't they? Nice approach to a Tories in Neil Turner. That'll be a very competent little bit of driving there. Coming up to Rolt Corner through the last bit of S, which is nice and dry. Rolt beautifully circulated inside wheel, both lifting up very, very nicely. It'll be a very good time. Going to be under 55, yeah, 52.25, followed by 106 Stuart Lugger. This is the Rover Mini 998. His first 64 feet was 2.82. We can see it getting drier and drier throughout the whole of the track now. One bit of additional information, you may understand why the corners are called that they are. Taurus is obviously from a Taurus Bugatti, because this is the Bugatti Owners Club. But Pardon is very different. As you come out of Pardon, if you were to turn right rather than going left, on the right hand side, on the inside corner, you see a huge old oak, which has really been cut down, but it's very prominent. And it was on this corner that Judge Jeffreys came to the local district to meter out his legal requirements, particularly those who were horse thieves or thefts or whatever. And if you were found guilty, clearly in those days you were hung. But if you were not, you were pardoned. And as the tree remains still there, it is called Pardon. And we of course call our hill Pardon Hill Climb, or a big one, Pardon, which is the respective corner in itself. Oh, it looks as though our marshals are disbanding themselves, taking off their masks. That would suggest to me that was their last run, and we are now about to finish. So thank you all for watching, for listening. Thank you for our timekeepers, which keep me up to scratch with everything that is going on. Thank you for marshals being out there, apart from the one little bit of wet weather you kept dry. Thank you for our Chief Marshal keeping everybody under control, those in the paddock. Thank you for the catering boys and girls and their wonderful silver machine. I'm sure everyone enjoyed your sandwiches, your buns, your hot food. Thank you for marshalling, and it remains me to say thank you, more importantly, for those who have competed. And for those who have listened, I hope you've enjoyed the afternoon, and as soon as our government enable you to come and visit Prescott as part of our team, we'll be delighted to enjoy your company. If you go on our website, there are many events ahead of you this summer. We obviously have the Hill Climb Championship here, which is run throughout the season, of which we compete, or beg your pardon, they compete on other hills throughout the country, but the final is kept here for Prescott. We have the VSCC weekend in August and September, and the Hill Climb Championship runoff in late September. So go on our website. If there are any questions you like, we have a very competent team here at Prescott who are there from Monday to Friday. Speak to them. Our team leader there will talk to you. And of course we have our website, and I suppose importantly we'd like you to join, and you can join on any basis. If you have a car, if you just want to spectate, if you want to help with the team, either in the marshalling or any part of the club, we'll be delighted to entertain you. So thank you for listening, thank you for taking part, and I wish you an enjoyable weekend ahead. And looking at the sky, we might be in for a dry spell at last. So we'll be able to take our water wings off and maybe take off the odd jacket and gumboots. So from myself, Nick Upton, and from the club, which is the Prescott Hill Climb, which began in 1937-38 as part of the International Hill Climb Championship in Europe. I wish you an enjoyable and safe weekend, and take care going home. Thank you and goodbye.